a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tokimaru and I'm here to have a look at Rabidja's Revenge. This is a traditional 2D platformer developed and self-published by Meruvia Game Studio. And let me say, this one's a little bit of an interesting one. So, first of all, one thing that I like to do when I do these have a look at is I like to take a gander at the developers and publishers of these games. I like to get a good grasp of where this game is coming from. For instance, if there was maybe a Kickstarter, if it's like someone's first game, or if they have a few years of published games, I like to take a look at the developer's history. I think it's like very, very important to get the full picture when I sort of give my opinions on these, because sometimes I might be a little bit more or a little bit less lenient depending on the circumstances. This one's a little bit of a weird one. Like I said, I went to take a look at the publisher's website and it was fairly bare bones. From what I can find, they mainly sell programming tutorials, but they have published games in the past. The problem is that all of their previous games were published only to the Xbox Live Indie Marketplace. So I wasn't actually able to, as far as I know, they haven't published any of their games anywhere else with the exception of this game, which is available on Steam. But I have seen a few of their, I've seen footage of a few of their previous games. I have to say, so one of the first things that struck me about this game, other than like 2 or 3 other things, one of the first things that struck me about this game was the art style is so, I don't necessarily want to say bad. But the art style, especially for the characters, is so bizarre. Like, if you take a look at the titular Rabidja, it's so off-putting. It's just so weird. It feels like they opened up Paint 3D, took the orb tool, and just made a human body shape with it. Like, why is his nose like that? Why are his eyes like that? All of their characters for the previous games felt exactly like this, and it's just so weird. But one of the other things that sort of captured my interest in this game is that this game is actually made to be playable on a Game Boy or Game Boy Color. This is an actual playable Game Boy game. From what I can find, they actually have made cartridges. Right now, I'm playing the Steam version, which is the version that's playable on Game Boy Color, but additionally, in the files, they've also included the ROMs. So you can actually download those and play them on a Game Boy or Game Boy Color emulator, which I thought was actually really cool because you don't see that kind of thing that often. Obviously, in terms of technology and consoles and stuff, once we get past a generation or two, obviously no one ever makes games for those anymore. There's no real tangible benefit to doing that because nobody's like buying NES or Game Boy games in year of our Lord 2026, right? But I think it's really, really cool when people do that because it's really hard to sort of like go into old hardware and try to manufacture something like that. I think it takes a lot of I don't know. I think it's just really cool. But yeah, this game is a Game Boy / Game Boy Color game, so I feel like I should be going easy on it, but I have quite a few criticisms of this game, but I feel like I should be going easy on it because obviously, technologically, a Game Boy game is very, very basic, but I have played a few Game Boy / Game Boy Color games that I feel like are do certain things more competently than this game. I will say immediately off the bat, other than the weird off-putting art style, the Rabidja, the music in this game is amazing. Like, oh my god, listen to this phenomenal title theme. I'll be quiet for a minute so you can take a listen to it. Yeah, like I said, quite good. This track in particular actually reminds me a lot of like some of the early classic Mega Man tracks. I really enjoy it. Now, obviously, because this is a Game Boy game, we don't need to jump into any options menus. That's that's like one of the few cases where I'll forgive not having an options menu of any sort. I'm trying to think of any. I mean, there are a few games where you have some options, but obviously nothing that we need to particularly worry about in my usual case. Now, I've beaten this game. This game takes about 1 hour to beat if you're fairly competent at platformers. If you have decent platforming skills, it only takes an hour to beat, but when I got to the end of the game, I found out that there's actually a way to unlock bonus levels, which is really cool. You have to find these secrets in the levels, and you have to find a certain amount before you can unlock bonus levels. I haven't done that, so I don't know how long it takes for you to find all the secrets, but since the game only takes 1 hour, I can't imagine 100%ing this game. It takes more than 2 hours at most. But let's jump right into a new game. I didn't jump into a new game. I made a mistake, and there's no way for me to back out. Sorry, I accidentally dumped myself right into a boss. Let me reset the game and get right back into a new game for you. All right, so this is Rabidja's Revenge. Obviously, as a retro platformer for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, you don't get that much of a story. It's a few dialogue boxes. You're basically this guy, which we'll see in like 2 seconds. This evil professor steals your money, and you have to go and stop him. That's about it. He steals your money, you have to go stop him. It's fairly basic. Obviously, you can get more complex. I don't know if this was intended to be that complex of a game, but I feel like they could have done the story of this game. I don't necessarily want to say better, but they could have elaborated more on it. Now, this game, I feel... Ooh, another banger in this game. Like I said, the music in this game is quite good. Now, I feel like, first of all, the overall art in this game, I know, I keep on saying this, I know it's a Game Boy / Game Boy Color game. I feel like the pixel art in this game is sort of substandard and fairly basic. I know, I know you're very limited by what you can do on the Game Boy. I feel like they could have gone a different direction with the sprites, because a lot of them, especially the character and enemy sprites, feel really large in this game, and what that ends up leading to is it takes up a lot of the screen real estate. I've noticed in certain parts of the game, you can't see what's to the left or right side of your screen, even if you're like near the very edge of a platform. So if they don't get the spacing just right, like you can see here, you can just barely see a platform on the right side of the screen. I found there are actually quite a few places in this game where they don't put things within range of the screen. So what ends up happening is you have to take quite a few leaps of faith. And I feel like that could be attributed to the size of the sprites and the art style. I feel like that's one of the main criticisms of this game that I have, is that because of the art style of this game, where everything is pretty large and takes up a lot of screen real estate, what ends up happening is I feel like they can't make super interesting or complex platforming challenges or level design outside of, you know, just fairly basic jumps for the most part until we get to the last world of the game. I feel like that's one of the main things, is that the overall design of this game feels fairly limited. Now, you have 2 jumps. You have one jump and you have another jump. There is a bug in this game where if you die and you restart a level, you like lose your first double jump when you respawn. So for instance, if I die and I go jump, double jump, it doesn't let you do that. It's a weird bug. Again, for context, this is a Game Boy game. I'm not too mad about that, but it is an annoying bug when I die and then I restart the level, and then I hold right, and then I try to double jump, and then I fall into a pit. It's really annoying. But yeah, you have that double jump. There is that weird bug, keep in mind, and you have the ability to shoot shurikens. The most bizarrely drawn shurikens I've ever seen. These are more like jacks. These feel more like jacks. All enemies in this game are a one-hit kill with the exception of bosses. There is also one specific enemy that can't be killed with shuriken. But they are a one-hit kill. If you touch an enemy, that is also a one-hit kill. There are no lives and there is no life in this game. You touch something, you die, you either restart the level or they respawn you at the checkpoint. I will say, for longer levels, I feel like the checkpoints are quite generous. I feel like they're pretty well spaced out. For these shorter or more medium levels, it feels like there either are no checkpoints or there's only one checkpoint, and the spacing of it is really annoying because it feels like you can get pretty far into a level and then they drop you all the way at the beginning of the game or at the beginning of the level. But I'd say that's probably a worthy sacrifice for not having lives. That's one of those things where, because this is a modern game, after we realize that the life system for a lot of these early platformers kind of sucks and is annoying because it either has to restart the whole game, or there's basically no punishment except for having to wait like 30 seconds while you respawn at the beginning of a map or something. But like I said, all the enemies are fairly basic. They all die in one hit. They all kill you in one hit. The only exception is a ghost enemy you'll see later on, where the only way to kill them is by, new mechanic, jumping on their head. Jumping on their head. Very, very Mario. It's very Mario. This game feels like it sort of takes a couple mechanics from a couple different games, or a couple things from a couple different games. Like I said, some of the music sounds very Mega Man to me. You also have this gun that shoots straight forward. Some of the sprites in this game actually remind me a lot of Kirby. I think it's probably because of the size of the sprites. And the enemies are, or the ability to just kill an enemy by jumping on it is very Mario. And what ends up happening is this game feels sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. Whoops, my bad. Where it feels like it doesn't do anything in it particularly well. It's all serviceable. Like, there's some difficulty in what the enemies do and where they're placed, but I think for the most part, a lot of them are really basic in that they just go left and right or up and down. I think this guy's like the most unique enemy in the game, where you can't kill him by using shurikens, but you can kill him by jumping on him. But other than that, I don't think the enemies in this game are particularly interesting. Oh, I accidentally pressed the button. So this is a weird thing about this game. Because I'm playing it through the Steam port, obviously on a Game Boy, you only have start, select, A, B, and up, down, left, right. But on the Steam port of this game, they have a button to exit the game wholesale, because obviously there's no options menu in here. So let's not do that. And then they have another button that lets you change the game to full screen. Because I don't know, something about the way they did it makes it so that you can't actually full screen the window unless you press a shortcut button. It's very, very bizarre. I'm not necessarily going to fault them on that, but I have run into a few situations where I accidentally pressed the full screen button. But yeah, that was an accident. Now, in terms of the platforming and jumping physics and stuff, it feels like in this game, what was the point of that? So this is one of the things. I feel like the level design in this game isn't particularly complex. It's mostly just going from left to right and getting to the end of the level until you get to some of the later worlds. So you don't really get much in the way of interesting exploration, but sometimes you get something like this where it's just like, why is this here? Why does this exist? Because there are secrets in this game, but obviously this isn't one of them. So occasionally you just get these random paths that don't do anything for you. And other than that, there aren't that many. Here's my secret. Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know why that path exists. But other than that, the level design isn't particularly interesting. Let's head to the next level. Outside of the secrets, I will say a couple of the later levels are a little bit more complex in that you have to go through like a second path and then make a return trip. This is also one of those things I was saying where you have to take a leap of faith here. I know that there's actually a platform here, but if you didn't know that, you would have to take a leap of faith and you would probably die. There we go. So that's an annoying thing about this game. There is also a secret up here, I remember. That is another thing about this game. The movement in this game is fairly sluggish. Like, the startup time on moving is pretty slow. Like, if I click, it takes like half a second for you to actually get started. So when you get to the first boss, the first boss is a very basic movement pattern, but when we get to it, it's going to be really annoying. It's going to be really annoying. Just because you have to like stop, and you have to like stop to shoot him, but your movement in this game is very restrictive. Like the physics of your body, you fall really quickly. You feel very heavy in this game. The physics is very weird. The momentum feels slow and sluggish. I don't know if we're gonna get to it, but the next world is like a water world where you have to do swimming. The swimming in this game is absolutely atrocious. If you've hated swimming in platformers like this before, you would hate the swimming in this game. That's an evil trap they set. Is there a secret over there? I'm not gonna bother. The swimming in this game is awful. You start out really slow. The up and down, the up and down movement when you're in the water is very fast, but the horizontal movement is very slow, and it requires you to build up a ton of momentum before you go really fast. And when you do, like I said, the level design in this game, because the sprites are very big, what ends up happening is there's not much screen real estate. So when you're in the water levels, there are actually quite a few very small caves where they've decided they want to put like ground tiles as obstacles. So what ends up happening is you bump into a wall, you lose all your momentum. You have to start mashing the swim button again to build up momentum. You crash into another wall and you can't move. It's so slow and it feels so bad. Like, honestly, I think probably the worst, least enjoyable part of the game is just doing the water levels because of how slow and clunky the movement is. It's truly, truly awful. How do I unpause? Oh yeah, okay, I remember. This is kind of a funny quirk of the game. If you pause, you can't unpause by pressing the pause button again. You have to press A to look at your inventory, because apparently the pause button is also how many gold pieces do I have. So that's a very bizarre quirk of the game. Shoot. Like I said, this boss has a very simple attack pattern. I think the attack patterns for most of the bosses in this game are extremely simple. They don't do much other than move from one part of the screen to another. They don't really have a complex enemy AI to them. They don't really have a complex enemy AI to them. They just kind of move from one part of the screen to another, and then they shoot you, and that's about it. But what makes it difficult is how slow and clunky the movement feels in this game. With the exception, it's kind of funny, with the exception of the last boss, I would show you, but I accidentally deleted my save file. The last boss in this game is so bad. So like I said, now that we're in a water level, this is how fast you can move. if you're moving from 0 speed, this is how fast you go up and down. This is how fast you move left and right. And in order to actually move quickly, you sort of have to build up momentum going one way. And then if you bump into the wall, you lose all momentum. So it's like the level design is always like, oh, well, we'll put a wall here and cause you to lose all your momentum, so you're forced to stop and reset your speed. Oh, look, we're going through another cave. Let's build a momentum. Oh, we have to go right? Well, I guess we have to I guess we have to build momentum again until we can actually move, and then oh, well, we have to go up here. It feels really bad all in all. This is also one of the more unique enemies in that it actually shoots bullets. The annoying part is, again, because of the screen real estate, oftentimes they're going to be shooting from off screen, or they don't start shooting until they get on screen. But like, you have to get close to them to actually be able to hit them with your bullets. So what ends up happening is, if you try to get close to them to be able to shoot them, then most of the time they're just going to be able to shoot you. But yeah, for the most part, that's pretty much this game. I feel like it doesn't do anything particularly unique or it doesn't do anything particularly unique. There we go. Or interesting. It sort of feels like just an experiment to, oh God, the movement in this game is so bad. It doesn't do anything particularly unique or interesting. It feels like a game that exists purely to create a platformer. Like, it wasn't made because they had an interesting idea for a platformer. It feels like they made it because they said, I want to make a platformer, and then just sort of put in things that are in platformers, like jumping on enemies' heads and swimming and shooting bullets and maybe collecting secrets, and then that's it. But I want to say that might not necessarily... How did I get up here again? Again, this is a Game Boy game, but I feel like there are a lot of Game Boy games that actually have a stronger approach to design. Oh God, like I said, when I played this the first time, this is the world that made me want to quit, because it feels so bad going through this. Anyway, I'm gonna quit before the water levels make me lose my mind. But yeah, that's basically it. I feel like there's a lot this game could have done better, but arguably there's a lot that this game could have done worse, because I've definitely played far worse retro platformers than this. There are games that are way worse in a lot of ways, but that doesn't necessarily absolve this game of some of the poor decisions it makes. Oh shoot, this guy's so annoying. You know what? I'm gonna stop playing. This water level is gonna make me lose my mind. But yeah, I just thought it was mostly interesting because it's a new game made for Game Boy. If you're interested in that type of project, it might be worth checking out. But if you've played a lot of these older retro games that I feel do things far more competently than this game, it might not necessarily be worth it. This game is available for $6.99 or regional equivalent on Steam and itch.io. The itch.io version also has a free demo you can get, and like I said, this game also comes with ROM files so you can emulate it. And I don't know if it's still available, but they were selling Game Boy cartridges for this game on their website. My name has been Tokimaru. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.